How's it going, guys? It's Adam here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the iPhone 4 in 2024. How does this hold up 14 years later? So this was released back in 2010, which is such a long time ago, it's crazy. But one new thing that was really special about the iPhone 4 was its design. Instead of a curved back or curved sides or anything like that, we have an aluminum side and a beautiful glass back. And so as a result, the sides are completely flat and so is the back, unlike the previous generations. There was also many other improvements, such as an upgraded 512 megabytes of RAM, the Apple A4 chip, as well as a 5 megapixel 720p camera, as well as a front-facing camera that you can't really see because of the lighting, but you can see right there. And overall, there was a lot of improvements with this iPhone 4. Also, there was a completely new display, but we're going to talk about that right now. So, like I said, let's start off with the display. So, we have a resolution of this display of 640 by 960, and this was very important because this was the first ever Retina display, which means this was sharper than basically any other phone on the market. So if we zoom in here, you can see that it's actually very, very sharp, just as sharp as basically all the new iPhones. This is an IPS LCD screen, and what I will say is compared to the competition at the time, it was very, very impressive. One thing that I will say is that for 2010 standards, there was extremely good viewing angles. The colors were bright and colorful, and also the brightness was not too bad either. However, what I will say about this now in 2024, over 14 years later, is that it's definitely not as good. However, it's honestly not that bad, even for 2024 standards. The biggest thing is that the screen isn't as big. However, what I will say is that even in these extremely bright conditions, it's actually not terrible for a 14-year-old device. One thing I'll especially say is that the colors are still extremely vibrant, basically just as vibrant as any iPhone today. It's also, yeah, like I said, pretty bright, and overall there's not too many complaints with the display, even in 2024, besides the fact that the screen is just so small at only 3.5 inches. Okay, let's also talk about this design. And so like I said before, this is aluminum on the side and glass on the back. And what I'll say about this design is that this is timeless and honestly inspired many of the iPhones today. It still uses this boxy design. So in my opinion, it's just absolutely a beautiful, stunning phone. We also have Gorilla Glass on the front, and what I'll say about this, the only thing that I'll say about this iPhone 4 in terms of its design flaw is that this is not the best because as a result, this was completely cracked when I got this. And but what I've seen from many different iPhones is that most of these iPhone 4s are cracked, and that's just because of basically how not shatterproof basically the iPhone 4 is. Besides that though, it is a stunning device. Let's talk about some of this power. We have 512 megabytes of RAM with the Apple A4 chip, and this started on iOS 4. And so on iOS 4, this was an extremely well-performing phone for the specs, and it was basically the top of the line. However, with iOS 7.1.2, this is just not great at all. Granted, it's actually not as bad as something like an iPad 2, an iPhone 4S, which is the successor to this, but it is still very bad. A lot of the apps that you want to open will take a pretty long time, might lag. As you can see, it does take a very long time to load essentially anything up. And I'm on Wi-Fi right now, and it's not even loading the weather app. It's been a little bit. And also, yeah, just opening up any kind of app, besides, you know, the basic apps, but even the basic apps like the settings took a little while. And so, yeah, as a result, the performance is pretty mediocre. And another thing is, on iOS 7.1.2, because it's so old, you really can't install anything besides the most basic apps. So apps like YouTube and Netflix might actually not work or might just not be usable at all, honestly. So yeah, for 2024 standards, the performance on this is extremely mediocre and is one where you can definitely tell that this is 14 years old. All right, let's talk about this camera. So this is a 5 megapixel camera on the back, and we have a VGA camera on the front. So I'm going to show you some main camera samples right here. So this first one, I basically clicked on the sky for exposure, and you can see that it's extremely underexposed. There is HDR off on this photo. And overall, the detail really isn't great. The sky obviously looks okay, but that's just because I clicked exposure on the sky, but everything else is underexposed. But right here, we have the HDR on photo. And this is actually okay. So the biggest thing is that everything is pretty well exposed. The sky is a little bit overexposed, and some of the ground is a little bit underexposed, but overall, the exposure looks all right. The biggest issue is that the noise is extremely high, as you can tell, and also the detail is extremely low because this is only a 5 megapixel camera. Here's another photo with HDR and a different kind of lighting, and this is kind of backlit, and this does not look good at all. It's extremely washed out, there's a very low amount of detail, and there's a high amount of noise. Here's another photo I did try to take, and still it's pretty much the same result, except with a little bit less exposure. And then here is another photo of the iPhone 5S that I have. And what I will say is that there's an okay amount of background blur, but it is pretty overexposed. However, what I will say is that it actually does look pretty sharp, and there's a low amount of noise, at least in this photo. This is another photo that I took. It's basically the same one, and it overall looks basically the same as the previous one. So here is the VGA camera, and overall this just looks horrendous. Let's take a photo here, though, in this kind of lighting. Basically, and okay, that is very, very blurry because there's no OIS or EIS, so let's try this again. Even then, it's just extremely low detail, the colors are washed out. There's nothing much to say about this VGA camera, besides it can do FaceTime calls. So, would I recommend this phone in 2024? No, not at all, because this is an extremely old software, the performance is mediocre, and the camera quality is mediocre as well. However, what I will say is that if you want this as a collector's item or to listen to music on, honestly, it's quite okay for the price of maybe $10 to $15 that you can find this for. And overall, I don't mind this phone at all for just some basic usage. It's kind of a fun phone because it's just such a timeless piece of hardware, and honestly, the software is just so beautiful on this phone. With the wallpapers, the simple design, it's just really nice. In conclusion, the iPhone 4 is a very good collector's phone. However, for main usage, for putting your SIM card in, for anything like that, I would not recommend this phone at all. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more videos. Peace out.